Did you come from a rough background? Are you struggling with a tough situation today? Well, on today's show, my guest, David Messano, is going to give you inspiration on how you can create the future that you desire. And it all begins with your mindset. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show where every day we are shifting our mindset by minding our thoughts. Today we have a very special guest on. His name is David Messano. He's from the West Coast out near San Francisco. David grew up in a big family of 18, and he's got a very interesting backstory that I want you guys to hear. Interesting guest. So, how you doing, David?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh man, thanks for being on the show. I can relate to you a lot. You come from a big family of, you say 18. I come from a big family of 13, seven brothers and six sisters, bro. So I'm right there with you in the
That's amazing.
tribe. So yeah, let me see. You want to talk a little bit about that, about growing up? I mean, I know the struggles and all that, so I'm gonna give you the floor.
Yeah.
Let's hear your backstory on growing up in a huge family like that, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think being in such a big family, like it was a blessing. And there's definitely bad parts about it too, but I mean, I would definitely see that there's more good from it than the bad. It definitely outweighed the bad. And I think one of the biggest things is that you always have people to be around. Like we didn't have to go around other people to basically have friends. Like we had each other, you know? And I
Oh,
think that was the cool part about being in such a big family is that you're constantly around each other, you're sticking up for each other. It taught me one of the biggest things is just being out there, you know? You can never be quiet, you can never be in alone in such a big family because they'll come out and take you out of your shell. And
yeah.
I thank them for that because being in a big family, I slowly learned as I grew up and people started moving out that isolation is not good for you. But that was one thing about being in a big family is just like, oh, like there's no isolation here. You're going to get out of your shell and you're going to be with us. You're going to live life. And it was there's the other thing too is just like the parenting. Like it was only two of them and 18 of us. So
Yeah.
we all have different personalities and it's like like they didn't do perfect at raising us but they did their best, but it was like they treated each and every one of us kind of the same because they didn't have an idea of how to train or teach or help 18 different kids. It's a big job. It's like having a school in session every day. And I think that was one of the key things. But we grew up poor. We grew up religious. We grew up actually in a cult. We grew up very poor where we literally had just enough money to get by. We had just enough money to get food. We lived off the government for a while. So
Hmm.
it taught us, and I didn't even really realize that we were poor until I got a little bit older. And I
Yeah.
started to realize that, oh, this is what is like. And
Yeah.
being in that family and just being in that environment and taught us to make something out of nothing. Whether it was going fishing for crawdads or going to work and mow lawns to get money so we can buy clothes that we like,
Uh
or
huh.
being able to, like for me, I was a big Lego guy when I was a kid. I
Oh
loved
yeah.
Legos when I was a kid. I think I was one of the only ones. So I was
Uh
like,
huh.
let's go mow lawns. And then all that money I got, I spent on Legos, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so it was like we learned to create things, whether it was going out and playing outside in sports, whether it was just being around each other, getting outside. And I definitely have to thank my parents for that because
Hmm.
they didn't let us watch TV or play video games at all, like when we were kids.
Hmm.
So we had no TV in the house, and it was just constantly like go outside, learn to do something, be creative. My dad always
Hmm.
used to say, write a letter, draw, or read. And that was like our three options. And it's like,
Yeah.
man, but looking back, I'm definitely so thankful for it because it taught me how to use my imagination, how to be creative, and how to build something from nothing. And most people can't do that nowadays. So
Uh
that's
huh.
just a little part of it.
Uh huh. So what I'm hearing from you is your parents were together the entire time with all you with all the kids.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
most of the time. So they separated right after the last one left
Oh,
the
I got
house.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But
So,
they're still together. It's a very religious marriage where they don't want to separate from each other. So
yeah,
they
yeah.
won't really like leave each other.
Uh-huh.
But they are separated.
So that was more like a structure for you. Like for me, I come from a family of 13, but by the time I was born, like my parents weren't even together. So it was like a split between the
Oh, gotcha.
family my entire raising up. So I'm kind of like, I'm not in that same pool with you to where you had that structure with both parents. So I don't know what that's like, but that is awesome that that was able to be a thing for you. So I
Yeah.
really admire that. So
Yeah.
that's pretty
At
cool, man.
Yeah, I think that had to do, especially with the religion, is I think both parents understood the essentialness
Mm-hmm.
of being together for the kids and what it had for us,
Uh huh.
which it wasn't like perfect. Like,
No.
my dad was very nitpicky, and I think this
Mm-hmm.
had to do with like not being occupied or having the role of a man or taking on that role of a man.
Uh
Is
huh.
he had nothing really to focus on, so he focused on doing other things outside of doing work, or he would had nothing better to do but just nitpick little things, and I think that really ruined the relationship between the two, to where we saw a lot of it. It was constant arguments about little small things like, oh, my pencils are missing, and it's like growing
Yeah.
up in an environment like that, it's like, are
Mm-hmm.
we really like doing this? Like,
Yeah.
this is crazy.
Yeah, an environment like that of a big clan like you had, I'm sure everybody had
Yeah.
their individual,
Yeah.
tweaks and perks. So I want to touch back. You said you were in a cult religion. What do you mean by that? Can you touch on that?
Yeah, so the religion was a big part in all of our lives, and it had a huge impact on my entire family,
Hmm.
myself especially. I would say other family members definitely had more of an effect done to them from the religion, but
Hmm.
it wasn't a cult to me until I realized it. But growing up in it, we were associated with just that church. We weren't, they separated themselves from the actual world. And it was like, this is us. This is the world. All these people are going to hell when they die. And this is us. We're going to heaven. And it's a very small religion. It's probably less than 50 members, one in every, not even in every big state. It's like maybe 25 states there's a church, maybe less than that. But they're
What?
very small, very cult oriented, and it's not at all healthy because it's like they will separate themselves, and if you don't do what they say, you're
Uh-huh.
now an outcast. It
Okay.
happened to two of my brothers, and it was devastating not only to us but them as well.
And what was the domination, or what was it? Christian or?
Yeah, so it's Christian, and it's called Church of Christ, but
Uh
it's
huh.
Christian, and it's literally like one of the why I say it's a cult is number one, they separated themselves from the world, but yet tried to get members from the world. It made no sense to me. Another
Hmm.
thing is that they didn't believe in making money. They believed money was like the root of all evil. So you couldn't make a lot of money. And that was one of the reasonings why my dad didn't work a lot of
Uh
his
huh.
life.
Uh huh.
Um, they also were very pushy, and they put every one of the people, the adults associated in that church would do this with their kids, is they would try and force you into doing this stuff by saying, if you don't do this, you'll go to hell. And then when things occurred in their life, they would go ahead and say, oh, like, you didn't go to church or you're not following the religion, so that was God speaking to you. And
Uh
then
huh.
that would scare us into like, oh, maybe I need to get baptized into this and nothing else matters.
Yeah.
But for me, especially, it was going out into the real world from that church. It was a culture shock, a total culture shock. And it had such an effect because I went outside of that religion and went into the world because I went to college. I moved, a lot of my family left home when they were 16. I think 17 at tops was the latest one of us left. And it was a culture shock because for me, I left when I was 16 to Vegas and I lived with my sister, and it was a total different environment. I was not ready for it, and mentally it was a struggle because it was like I felt like an outcast, but I had all these things built up, all these stimulations in my head from what I was raised with. And it was like constantly saying, "Oh, like I wasn't raised that way," or is that right? And it had me questioning my entire life, which I'm thankful for that because it started to get me to realize that, yeah, that was a cult. And then when I started talking to other people, they're like, dude, that's crazy. Like you went through that. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not normal. And it's like, not I didn't suffer from it as much as some of my other family members. Some of my other family members, it like really torments their life in a way that they struggle every day to kind of change that mindset that we grew up with.
And that is a mindset, and I admire you. I mean, couldn't imagine growing up in that and having that pressed upon your consciousness and trying to break out of that. And that's what this show is about, a mindset. And I'm glad you're on here to talk about your story and your struggle with it, and having to readjust your mindset. Like you said, you were conditioned to believe money is the root of all evil and stuff like that. So that is a real hard mindset to break out of. And you want to touch on what got you into realizing you have to change your mindset, stuff like that? Do you have a
Yeah,
story
man.
about that?
So, yes, I do. Actually, a crazy story. So, I was at one point I was struggling in my life. I had moved from Las Vegas. I had went to LA, but even before that, I was in high school. It was when I first started to move to Vegas, and I was having a hard time. Like I was smoking weed, having a hard time in school just because of the situation. Like my parents had just started separating, so we were bouncing from house to house. We didn't have finances. I was struggling in school because I didn't have like a mental stability, whereas like the environment that was in was always go, go, go. Like everything was unorganized. There was no like structure to life. And it
Mm-hmm.
definitely affected me mentally, but I started to smoke weed to calm me down, and that was my main thing at such a young age, though. And I remember I finally got a little bit of structure as I moved in with one of my sisters, but I still kept smoking weed because it kept me calm after all that trauma that I just went through. And so after that, I got a phone call because my sister figured out that I smoked and she let one of my other sisters know. And that sister reached out to me and she was like, "Hey, like, I heard what's going on. I heard you're having a hard time. Like, my house is open for you to move to Vegas with me to come and change your life. Like, we would help you graduate school and find out what's next." I heard that opportunity and I jumped on it. I was like, yes, like I want this. And I made the decision before I got out to Vegas. Like as soon as I got out there, there's no more smoking weed. And I knew one thing is to break a habit, you need to implement a new habit for that to take its place. And so for me, that was fitness. I wanted to join the basketball team and I went to sign up and I knew that I was too skinny. I was like 6 foot, 150 pounds. Really skinny guy, but I was tall, I was fast. I had the speed,
Uh-huh.
but I needed to put on size. So
Uh-huh.
I went into my school, signed up for the basketball team, started doing all the intramurals and all that to try out. I started weightlifting too. And the change
Mm-hmm.
really happened there is where I went into my weightlifting room. The second week of my weightlifting class, my weightlifting coach brought in one of the world's strongest man competitors, and he knew him personally. They actually trained together when they were younger. His name
Mm-hmm.
was Nick Best, and he came in and my whole life changed around fitness after that. He came in and he talked about his journey, and he actually started breaking down and crying about his mom being
Oh.
abused and him having a hard time growing up.
Uh-huh.
And he wanted to get strong so that way he would be strong enough to defend people that were weak, too weak
Yeah.
to even defend themselves. And he said one thing that I will never forget, and it always stuck with me, is that he said that if I can do it, you can too. And he was
Yeah.
the same way. He was 6'4", only 163 pounds, and now he's like 6'4", 340 pounds, just pure mass. And
Wow.
I'm like, the guy's just huge, and I'm like, man, like I want to be like that. Like
Yeah.
that's exactly what I want to be like.
Yeah.
And that's when my weightlifting journey just started, and it changed my entire life. My grades
Mhm.
in school went from a CD student to a straight A
Mhm.
student. I
Uh-huh.
started weightlifting all the time. And joined the wrestling team. I didn't make the basketball team, but the very next year, the coach came up to me and he said, "Hey, I regret it because I put on 20 pounds of mass within the first year of my weightlifting journey, and it was all
Yeah.
muscle." And he was
Okay.
like, "I made a mistake. Like, I wish I would have chose you." And I was like, "Yeah, it's too late. I don't even care about
Yeah.
that no more. I love this now."
Right.
And yeah, that was that journey. And I had a hard time though mentally. It's like I still had things stuck in me, and it was
Mhm.
lingering that I couldn't become successful. Just all that
Yeah.
stuff lingering in me from when I grew up is like, this is who you are, that's the way you are, and that's who you're
Mhm.
gonna be. And I constantly was just that mind body loop of every time that I tried to become better, every time I tried to find a way to make money or excel myself, those old feelings would come up of like, this is why you are the way you are, and you're going to stay that way
Right.
because it feels comfortable. And it was a
Mhm.
mentality that and a habit that got stuck in me at such a young age. And then
Mhm.
as I started to grow up, I had more and more problems with it. And as I moved from Vegas to LA, and that's where the change really was made. I got into the thoughts never really stopped. It got to me just having being all on my own and trying to figure things out on my own, but having
Mhm.
such a hard time. But I realized my mindset was always so negative towards becoming successful. It's like, oh, I don't need that, or I don't need to do any of that. So I would get lazy about it. So it was
Mhm.
like when I tried to push myself, my body would go straight into that comfortable mindset. Like, oh, this feels
Mhm.
uncomfortable because we never did that. So I
Yeah.
need to go back to feeling comfortable. And that feedback loop from my body would just tell me to go back to that comfortable spot. And I
Uh-huh.
struggled with it. I was like, man, am I never going to get successful? Am I never going to do something that's worthwhile? And I struggled so much with this to the point where I got extremely depressed and even suicidal at one point. And I remember when I was at that point, I had somebody that I really looked up to, and he came and he gave me some help. He gave me some guidance. He sent me a book, and that was he said this helped me, and he told me about it, and he was just telling me his experience about it, and it was Dr. Joe Dispenza's book of changing the habit of being yourself.
Okay.
And I was like, man, like if this changed him, I know his story. Like he had a hard time. Like I'm trying this. Like so, I had just started 75 hard, which I don't know if you know what it is. It's Andy Frisella's first form program. Basically, you drink a gallon of water a day. You do 2 workouts a day, one inside, one outside. You read 10 pages in a book. No alcohol. You stick to a
Uh-huh.
diet. It's very simple. It's just a daily routine for 75 days, and you see a transformation. So I had just started that, and I needed a book to read.
Wow.
So I chose
Okay.
that book and I started reading it. And when I tell you that was my life changing moment, that was my life changing moment. He
So that
went
was the
so into
pivot.
depth. Yes, he went so
Okay.
into depth about just the quantum physics of our brain. And he talked
Uh-huh.
about how there's so much potential up in the air all around us in this thing called the quantum field. And the only thing
Mhm.
that we have to do is put our thought and feeling to attract that to us. And it's like,
Mhm.
man, my mindset has been attracting the wrong thing this whole time. And he was like,
Yeah.
what you put your mind on is what you will attract. So if you're constantly putting your mind on this negativity, on this
Uh-huh.
lack of, that's what's going to get attracted into your life. Whereas
Yeah.
if you put your mindset on the unlimited, on the potential of what you can be, but
Mhm.
you can't just think about it. You have to feel and you have to be it. He was
Yeah.
talking about the one thing is that the quantum field rewards what we are, not who we are, or not
Mhm.
what we want. but who we are every
Who
day.
we
So it's
are.
like,
Yes.
yes. And if it's like, if you want to be a successful, wealthy person, you're going to have to live that life in reality
Hmm.
before it comes to you. And the
Yeah.
quantum field will reward you by giving you more of what you are, not what you want. Because you can
Yeah.
constantly think, and I've tried this, is shouting affirmations in the mirror, constantly
Hmm.
watching motivational videos. They do nothing. All you're doing
Hmm.
is saying something, but your body
Right.
and
You
mind
got to
believe
have the
something totally
feeling.
different.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta have a feeling. That's living in your end, is what he's saying. You gotta live
Yes.
in the end of what you want out of your life in reality. That is something that I had to realize too. Like, and what you said about Doctor Dispenza, in my darkest hour, depression, everything, I discovered him not through book, but like on YouTube and his videos and stuff like that. And boy, that brought me back into the light. He is an amazing, amazing teacher. So I would recommend anybody who haven't heard of Dr. Dispenza to check out his stuff. I hate to cut you off. I just wanted to say that. Please
No, of
continue.
course. No, that was I mean, I was pretty much at the end, but it was like you said, Dr. Joe Dispenza was a total mindset shift. Like he
Uh
brings
huh.
into reality and breaks down the quantum physics for a third grader to realize.
Yeah.
And his story was so unique too because he got to the point where he was a very athletic person, very active. He was a cyclist, and then
Yeah.
he got hit by a car and
Mm-hmm.
basically it tore his whole life up. Like he couldn't
Mm-hmm.
ride no more. He was paralyzed,
Yep.
and he talked about how he healed himself. Mind you, we're talking about being paralyzed. He
Mm-hmm.
talked about healing himself through changing his habit of mindset. And he
Yeah.
said through changing that habit, through changing that mindset, he was able to walk again and be able to now ride again and be able to teach other people. And
Yeah.
he does miracles now. Like he's done things where he's been able to take trauma away from people's life. He's
Yeah.
actually made people be able to see again and
Uh-huh.
actually walk again. And he said the mind is the limiting factor. The mind and the body and the feeling in the body,
Hmm.
that is the limiting factor of who you can be. But if you can alter that, it's not easy. It's not easy because for me, I'm
No.
23 years old now, and that's 23 years of subconscious buildup. And
Yeah.
that stuff's not to change that, to all of a sudden become conscious and try and change
Yeah.
that. My
Yeah.
body's going to fight that. Like, what are you doing? Like, this does not feel right.
Yeah.
Or we never did this. Like, why are we changing things up now? Like, let's go back to feeling miserable. That's what we usually did. And
Yeah.
your body, like trying to change 23 years of habitual thinking is like
Right.
trying to get off of cocaine. Cocaine is one of the hardest drugs to get off of. It's
Yeah.
literally like withdrawal from drugs. It's not easy. But what you see after is a miracle. You will
Yeah.
see one of the biggest life changes of your entire life.
Yeah. And what I have to say is, you at 23 starting this, you're on a great path already, man. I'm at 46, whether you know it or not. I'm at 46,
Holy.
and I've just recently been doing all this stuff. So within the past few years, trying to turn all the mindset, the trauma, dig in deep, do the inner work, all that at my age. So you're at 23 doing this. You're on a great trajectory path for a great life, man, if you just keep that mindset about you. And you already have like an amazing story at your age. It's just great. So what happened next? You want to continue? Did
Yeah,
you go to
so
military?
yes, that was
Yes.
the next part. So I
Okay.
went, I think the military was a huge life change too, but the
Hmm.
military more so gave me an understanding of structure, of who I needed to be, of how to be a better person in life, and how to have discipline and incorporate these things into building that better mindset. Because in the
Yeah.
military, I chose the Marine Corps, the hardest one. I thought it was the most badass, which I believe
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
but it is definitely truly one of the hardest boot camp out of all the branches, except
Hmm.
of course for all the special forces.
Yeah.
But mentally straining, physically straining, it was one of the most mentally straining events that I've ever went through in my life, because you don't have a choice. You got to walk outside. You got to wake up every morning at 5 a.m. getting yelled at, wake up, wake up, wake up every day, just getting played around like with played with like you're a rag doll, and they just
Yeah.
don't care. But they try and get you into that moment of getting out of your head and just doing it. And for that,
Yeah.
I can appreciate the military, because I was so like, oh, like I don't feel like getting up, like I'm
Yeah.
too tired, or man, this doesn't feel good. It doesn't matter. You're getting up in the military. They will throw you up if you don't get
Yeah.
up. You'll get your
Right.
rack flipped. And it taught me discipline, and it taught me how to excel. You're going to have to wake up. If you want to do better than others, you're going to have to wake up early, so that
Yeah.
way it's not so traumatic once you wake up. Have your bed made, have your stuff already on, get out of your rack and start going about stuff so you're not fully stressed out. But they'll
Mm-hmm.
play with you like all the time, and it's to stress you out the
Yeah.
entire time. But, and even that, like the cold, they would take us outside. You couldn't put your hands in your pocket, and we'd have just regular, we couldn't put beanies on, no gloves on. It was just our camis and our boots. We couldn't put our hands in our pocket. We'd be sitting out there at 5:30 in the morning with our freezing cold hands, couldn't feel anything, just numb.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd just
Mm-hmm.
be going out on with life. And it was like,
Yeah.
you have to do it. You have to
Yeah.
do it. This is essential. And when you start to have that mindset towards something, your mindset and your body start to shift and direct its attention towards that. It'll
Mm-hmm.
adapt. But if
Yeah.
you don't give in to that feeling of, oh, it doesn't feel uncomfortable, or oh, we never did this, or oh, this is who we used to be, let's go back to our old self, and you keep
Mm-hmm.
fighting and not giving in that any energy, oh man, it's a total shift. It's the start of breaking the habit of being yourself and creating a new self. And I think
Yeah.
that was the key in the military. But as I went on, I knew that I wanted a bigger challenge in the military. And I went from just being a regular enlisted Marine, and I wanted to become Special Forces, which is MARSOC in the Marine Corps. I started training for it when I was in my schoolhouse, and I wanted to be that, because I didn't want to be a number in the Marine Corps. I wanted to be something bigger, and I knew I had something bigger, especially with my physical and mental abilities. And I chose to start training with MARSOC, and one of the teachers had said that physically I was physically, my physical fitness ability was out of the norm. It just wasn't the same, and it gave me hope. It was like, man, like I've never really been good
Yeah.
at much, but she had said like I was picking up the swimming and the fitness just a lot
Yeah.
faster than the others, and she said I had potential to pass the physical fitness test, which is a
Yeah.
lot. Like you have to do a swim, there's a lot of pull-ups, push-ups, running, all that stuff. But
Uh-huh.
I got sent from my schoolhouse to where I was going to be stationed after all my training, and everything got dropped. Everyone was like, "Oh, you're so stuck up, like you're not going to make MARSOC," things like that. And it was a total
Mm-hmm.
mindset shift to getting around people that weren't motivated. They were just living everyday life, didn't really care about
Yeah.
anything, and they didn't have any type of motivations for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was doing this, I struggled. They wouldn't let me go train for MARSOC anymore. I didn't have anyone to train me, and my training stayed up, but a lot of the parts of my training have faltered because I didn't have a coach anymore. I didn't have that environment. I didn't have a pool to go
Yeah.
swim at, and
Right.
everything just went downhill from there. So I got tired, and I kind of revolted by not listening no more. Like I was like, if you guys aren't going to give me what I want, I'm not going to give you what you want. And basically they figured that out, and they sent me to a mental facility to get rid of me. And
Mm-hmm.
basically at that mental facility, it qualified me to be released from the military for medical discharges, and that medical
Mm-hmm.
discharge then had me out of the military within 2 weeks. It was
Mm-hmm.
very downgrading. That was a whole nother experience in that mental facility. It was definitely
What
different
were you
because,
feeling? What were you feeling in that moment when
oh man,
you were on this trajectory in life, and all of a sudden now that rug is pulled from under you? What were you feeling in that moment?
a step back, man. It was a
Yeah.
downgrade, but Luckily I have books, and books take me away and put me into, and that's the thing, is that the quantum field isn't your five senses. The
Mm-hmm.
quantum field is things you can't see, touch, smell, hear. You can't anything. It's a a blank plate, and you can
Mm-hmm.
go there and create anything. And that's kind of what books do for me.
Mm-hmm.
While I was in there, they allowed me to bring books with me. So
Yeah.
they give you a room with four other people, and these other people are just wild. Like, it's like, man, I
Mhm.
I shouldn't be here right now. Like,
Yeah.
it's like actual walking zombies. Like, they're just drugged up, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, man, I got the first day I asked to get out. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not crazy like this. Like, I'm good. And when I called the military, so the military purposely put me on there. When they put you there, it's the government. You're not going anywhere unless they say you are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, I had to stay in there for 2 weeks. And that was also the longest 2 weeks of my life. So
Mm.
I kept up my routine because I knew that I wasn't going to be changing that just because I felt bad. But the first day was rough because all you would see is screaming, like people just freaking out, like just
Yeah.
drugged out. And for me, my getaway was meditating, waking up at 5 a.m. 5 a.m. was the quietest time in there. So I would wake up, do my routine, read a book literally all day. I read 3 books while I was there. And one of the books that really changed my life and set my routine in place was the 5 a.m. Club, and the other one was As a Man Thinketh. And it totally changed my mindset on how to be. Like, you have to create that mindset that you want. And the 5 a.m. Club was taught me this 20-20-20 method of basically you wake up at 5 a.m., you
Mm-hmm.
immediately get out of bed, and you do a 20-minute workout to get your heart rate up, which lowers down your amygdala levels. And from
Okay.
lowering down your amygdala levels, you're now in this state of calm. And from there, you start to either meditate or journal. You do something to self help yourself. So by meditating and journaling, you start to go within yourself and understand yourself a little more. Now you got self clarification, your vibration and your frequency is higher. Now you go into the last 20 minutes, which is going to be self help. So you have to read something that'll self educate you, whether it's a business book, whether it's a self help book. You have to read something that's going to educate you. And that's just an hour a day. Totally
Mm-hmm.
changed my life in 2 weeks. It was just 1 hour of doing that a day. And it was literally for 2 weeks. And I seen a whole mental shift of waking up a negative, unhappy person whenever I wanted to waking up to wanting to get after it, wanting to change my mindset,
Yeah.
wanting to change the habit of being me. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of happened. And then as that military part just settled down, they released me. I got out of the military, things went south even more. And I'm glad that I was doing what I was doing at the time because it prepared me for it. And I was very groggy mentally. I had mental fog just of what everything happened. And I had a mentor as well. He just totally left me. He was like, I'm done with you. You got out of the military. We're done. Then I had a lot of friends, literally, I wouldn't even call them friends, but they disappeared. The people that I lived with, they kicked me out, so I had to move from LA back to where I am now just because of the situation. I wanted to stay in LA, but it would going through what I was going through, it was a little bit easier to come back and be around family. So I came back and I struggled, man. Like, mentally, I struggled. And the only thing that really kept me sane was just consistently reading and staying on that habit path, because then it kept me, like, no matter how hard it was, if I stayed on this schedule, I would, in this program, I would be able to keep myself and build a better self. And
It's
that's
all about
exactly what
discipline.
happened. Yeah.
Discipline. Yeah, and I would recommend that to anybody, whatever you're going through out there. Just as David's story, it's all about discipline. Whether it's weight loss, depression, your mindset, discipline. If you can discipline yourself in the areas that need to be disciplined, you will get through. So,
Totally agree.
um, you say you're where you're at now. Where are you at now in life? You a fitness coach? Is that what you? Is that
Yes.
what's going on with you now?
Yes. So
Okay.
basically, yeah, it was after I got things back together, I was in. So when I got out here to the West Coast, in the Bay Area where I'm at now. I worked at Starbucks. I was a store manager or a shift manager for Starbucks, and
Okay.
I like the job. I love coffee. I love cafe. I love the
Yeah.
interaction. It's
Uh-huh.
truly a cool experience. And I love doing it. It was a passion of mine, but the people around me, just working with people that were younger than me, working with people that had no life goals, it was very lower energy level, and I didn't want to lower my
Infectious.
frequency to be around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
And
want
I
to get
I
infected
had
with
such
it.
a high energy, yeah, and a high vibration, and I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
lower that by just staying
Right.
around people that had nothing going on, that didn't want to be
Mm-hmm.
better.
Yeah.
So I started my first business, and it was in the car rental industry. I started doing Toro, and
Oh,
I
okay.
saw a lot with that. So what happened was I got into a car crash,
Mm.
and I didn't know what to do. I was like freaking out. I was like, man, like I just got into a car crash. Like, what's going on? I wanted to get away from Starbucks. So the opportunity showed itself, and I heard about Toro, and I was like, man, like what I can do is I can buy a car and I can just post it on Toro and it would be paid for. So I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna do this. So I did it. Bought a 2022 Toyota Camry because I love Camrys. I love the
Mm-hmm.
look of them, and I put it on there on Toro. And the first month, the car's payment was paid like for the month, and I was like, and
Uh-huh.
I made more than that too. So I made twice
Uh-huh.
the amount of the payment, and I was like,
Toro, what is,
hold on,
I'm
like,
sorry, what is Toro?
so it's a third party car rental platform.
Oh,
Basically,
okay. Okay.
yeah, so basically you can sign up on this platform and they advertise your car, but of
Uh-huh.
course they take their piece of it and they take
Yeah.
a nice chunk out of it.
Okay.
So I did that, and I
Mm-hmm.
started to see the money, and I was like, oh, like I could make this a big thing. So
Yeah.
what do? I go and buy a whole ton of cars, and I bought 5 cars, posted them on there, and I started making the most I made in a month was $8,000 in a month. And I was like, man, like I can almost leave Starbucks. Of course, half of that was expenses, but
Yeah.
I was like, I'm making more than I am at Starbucks. Like I can leave.
Uh-huh.
And so that's what I did. I quit Starbucks to go full time with this, but it took a downturn because
Mm.
there is a lot other stuff than just car renting. You have to worry about insurance, you have to worry about
Yeah. I can
expenses.
imagine. Yeah.
And when things pop off, when things actually do go wrong with your car, it takes time to fix it. And it's like you have to get paid for that. And insurance takes a long time. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, man, like I don't like this anymore. And so I decided that I couldn't do that. Just wasn't profitable because mentally it was tough. I didn't have a game plan really. And so I decided to stop doing. I still did it, but not as like adamantly. So I decided
Mm-hmm.
to go do electrical with my brothers. They have their own company and they do custom electrical at custom homes. So I started doing electrical with them. And while I was doing that, I realized I stayed with fitness. I've been doing been a CrossFit coach for 2 years at that point now. And it was like I wanted to do that, but I wasn't really making money off of it. So I found somebody online that inspired me a lot, Wes Watson. And he inspired me just about what I learned about vibration, energy, eating correctly to bring your vibration and frequency high, and being the
Mm-hmm.
person of that you would dream to be, so that way
Yeah.
you can become and bring that person to reality
Uh-huh.
and more of that person to reality because you're already being him. So I totally agreed with his message, and I paid to be for him to be my mentor, and totally changed my life. I quit the electrical, gave up everything, bought a new computer, and now I'm following on this path because he gave me a blueprint and it worked for me, and I was only on it for 4 months. And literally it changed my life from being I thought I was in shape, but I got on his program and I got 4% body. Now I'm 4% body fat, 180 pounds, just shredded. And I went from 185 pound, 13% body fat, didn't have any
Wow.
routines, did whatever I wanted, ate whatever I wanted. But he taught me the effect of what it's like to be that person, what it's going to look like to become the person that you want to be. And now I
Uh-huh.
found it. And now I don't care about anything. Like, I don't even care if I lose anything. I would still do this because this is what changed my life, and I know it can change everyone else's. And right now I'm
Uh-huh.
working with a few clients now, and one guy's already lost 8 pounds in 2 weeks, another one lost 7 pounds in 3 weeks. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
seeing this, not only have they lost weight, they've had a total mental shift from, oh,
Yeah.
like I wasn't that confident or I didn't know who I really was, to they'll start hopping on and like, man, like I'm
Uh-huh.
starting to realize what my real goals are
Yeah.
and what it's like to live
Yeah.
a real cool
Uh-huh.
life. And it's
Uh-huh.
like they start to wake up, and it's like that's what the mental shift of my programming is you
Yeah.
start changing your mindset by working on your nutrition and your fitness and your
Mm-hmm.
daily disciplines and habits, small little changes
Yeah.
added
Yeah.
to your day, and you see an entirely different person.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. Like, you got to do all this. You work out 2, 3 times a day. I do that because I'm trying to become an athlete in the CrossFit games, which it takes a
Yeah.
lot. But when I train people, the most they've ever trained is 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
They've seen 10 pounds, 30 minutes a day, 10 pounds in less than in a month or less. And they do nutrition. They change their lifestyle with nutrition. We put them on a macronutrient dense plan, and then we
Mm-hmm.
focus more on whole foods if you're looking to follow whole foods. But we don't have to jump immediately into eating super healthy. We take those
Right.
by small steps, but first we have to stick and be disciplined to a diet. And then on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, we add daily habits, which we incorporate the 20-20-20 rule. And then
And
that's
that helps with
changing your
mindset.
mindset.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
So you
Exactly. So,
incorporate that in your programs.
yes. And then waking
That's
up at
awesome.
5 a.m. and then
Mm-hmm.
they can join my elite program. Whereas we
Mm-hmm.
start going over what they want to be in life. What do you want to
Yeah.
do in life? And how can we set goals and to start doing daily habits to reach that? And people start seeing total shifts because now you're changing from, oh, I'm in lack. I'm in this situation. This is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. They go from that to, I'm going over here. This is who I want to be. And you're shifting your mind from that to this. And
Yeah.
but you're not just doing it once, you're doing it every day now, because in that 20-20-20, you're now going to be thinking on that goal. What can I do to get better and move that needle forward? And now every day you're building momentum towards that new mindset, and you're winning.
Mm-hmm.
And just within a month, you'll see this person that you were compared to this totally different person that you
Yeah.
want to be. And you're becoming that person, that dream person you want to be. So
Yeah.
that's what my programming is about, and that's where I'm at now. Is it's a dream, man. It's a total dream.
That's some awesome, awesome stuff, David. That you're really, really putting it out there, and I probably need to get on your program, man. It sounds so great. All that body fat percentage of stuff I'm trying to get myself down to stuff. But it does all start with mindset. And that's what we're
Yes.
trying to get people out there to realize. And David, if they're interested in getting on your program and changing their mindset and living the dream life and having the dream body, how can they get a hold of you, David?
Yeah, so you guys can definitely get a hold of me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Instagram reel is going to be David underscore Messano, one of 18. Facebook, you can just look me up, David Messano. And then TikTok, you can look me up at Cogito underscore ergo underscore sum, which is I thought, therefore I am. That's kind of,
Okay.
it's fitness.
All right.
It's my
Awesome.
favorite Latin quote. I
Yeah.
love it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you can do that. You guys can also email me at Messano or
Mm-hmm.
Vici Fitness
Uh-huh.
95 at gmail.com. So any one of those, you guys can get a hold of me, and we can definitely talk and sit down and start planning goals.
All right, that sounds great. David, I really, really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully you will come back on time and time again because I know the crowd is going to resonate with what you have to say, and the things you're doing out there is just great. And your backstory is an awesome backstory, and I really appreciate you being on here today.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. This has been amazing.
Okay, and for everybody out there, always remember, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. If this video helped you out in any way, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification button so you can check out more videos just like these.